yeah, it's really good to hear you, Dave, and the messages that you've been sharing. A lot of them are great reminders of the roles that we play as coaches and the importance of where we place our time. You think about the overload piece, and Tom talked about Instat and that, and I actually went a little bit the other way, Tom, in that our home jerseys have um, had bad coloring in that they were red with black numbers on them, and those computers in Russia where they send the Instat video to wouldn't read our jerseys for the algorithms. So we ended up changing the numbers on it so that we can share that information with kids. And but I take it the other way with it and have the kids share with me what information they would like to go over. Put the onus back on them, but the kids that I'm working with are U18, so they're 15, 16, 17-year-olds. And some of them, I know that they look at everything that they see, and there's others that I know that they hardly ever log into it, and those pieces. But yeah, so it's great hearing your experiences, Dave, and I know that Wally shares many Dave King-isms with us as mentor, and they're always great nuggets to take along with us. As far as numbers go, Dave, I came across the numbers on the IHF website a few years ago, and the Canada has been surpassed by the U.S. by number of players registered.
Wow.
Last year was the first year that it happened. Canada has just over 513,000 players. The U.S. has 551,000 players.
Wow. Interesting.
And then the breakdown of it is Canada has just over 2,800 rinks, and the U.S. Has just over 1,500 rinks. And so, in probably in both countries, and I know Hal would probably agree that we're still screaming for ice time, no matter how many rinks we have. But the problem is that they sit idle during the day. Although those of us in schools try and I've started a hockey program in each of the schools I've been at to try and make use of some of that time during the day to help out kids and that. And the other thing that's pretty interesting, though, where we're even in it is female players. The Americans have 88,000 female players, and Canada has 89,000.
Wow.
And the breakdown on, they call it junior players. I don't know what the heck that means. Canada has 361,000 of them, and the Americans have just over 300 or right around 320. And then it says male players in the U.S. is 143,000, and in Canada is only 62. So I don't know what that means.
Is that juniors? Is that it?
Well, the junior number is higher, Hal. I don't know. Like the junior numbers are in the 300,000 range, and then the male says only 62. So I don't know what that breakdown is, but the big thing for me is that the female numbers are pretty big in both of those countries, and I think it's showing where the growth of our game. I know that that's where the growth is happening here in Calgary. That there are 1,400 female players within GHC, and another 700 that are still playing on the male side. So you got 2,100 that way. Whereas the quadrants and that the male side is receding in their numbers. That they're stagnant, if not shrinking, in numbers. And then when you talk about other sports, Dave, here in Chestermere where I work, I know that just a couple of years ago that there were 1,400 kids registered in Chestermere minor soccer and only 900 in minor hockey.
Wow.
And in a community of just under 30,000.
Yeah.
Is that a cost issue, do you think?
Part of it's cost. Part of it is also, though, that we have a lot of new Canadians, or relatively new Canadians, that hockey was never their sport. Soccer was.
Right.
Yeah. The demographic issue.
Yeah.
We
And
see
a
that
community
here.
that only has 20, or a community that has 29,000 or around that people with only 2 sheets of ice is also a limiting factor.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to build another sheet of ice here. And I think there's 4 or 5 projects just in Minnesota going on right now, and not including the super rink, which already has 8 sheets, and they're talking about building 2 more. But you know, my team, we share, we have shared ice practices 95% of the time, which is
Uh-huh.
too much. And we're a small program. We've only got 300 kids in the whole program, but a lot of kids at the lower levels.
Mhm.
But we also see the high school programs contracting. We lose, you know, the boys hockey is losing numbers for whatever reason, at least in Minnesota. So
I've always felt, guys, with the dropout rate, that yes, there's the expense, there's the demographics, but I think one of the underlying reasons is that when I was first started coaching, it was kids could get to 15 and 16 before they really figured out if they were going to be good enough. Now
yeah,
it's that has dropped because we have the traveling teams, we have all these all-star teams or super leagues, whatever they have for children. And so at a younger age, they seem to recognize that, hey, maybe I should go to something else and do something else and play something else. And so I guess it has food for thought for us because we love our game so much is to, how can we deal with that realization? Can we, is there ways to do it? I don't know if we have to have traveling teams for kids 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't know that. I'm not an expert on those kind of things, but we tend to start to cut things down, trim things up. Kids are disappointed that they can't play at age 10 or 11 with a traveling team, so they go somewhere else. I'm wondering if those things might be things that are changeable. Some aren't. Demographics, things like that, are that's the way it's going to be. Fine, but I don't know if we aren't developing specialization in our game, or because to me, I've seen kids at 11 and 12 that weren't really, they were just average players, but boy, at 15, 16, because they stayed with it, they became real good hockey players. And so I don't know. I just think that we have to look at what we're doing, not just in coaching, Wally, but in the structure of our game, in terms of all those decisions about hockey academies and all that. We have to look at all those things because I think we're creating a model that I don't know where it's going. I mean, if it's going to be a model that's going to be very expensive to play, you have to prove your worth by about age 11 or 12.
yep.
I think for sure our numbers shrink, no question about it. There'll be other sports that become better sports to play, and then
Well,
hockey
Dave,
has to be fun too.
yeah, Dave, you've hit it on the nail on the head of where it has to be looked at. Is you go back to the monetization of the game, and when you talk about it changing from hockey schools to hockey academies and those sorts of things, back in the day when a kid went to a week-long hockey camp in the summer to training all year round and all of those things, I call that the monetization of the game. I don't feel that people shouldn't be able to make a living however they want to do it, but uh, it's it's become very problematic. It's the dropout piece versus the not starting piece are two different things.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of the traveling teams at 9 and 10 years old, well, we know that has more to do with mom and dad wanting to sew an extra A on their own jacket than their kids, and those sorts of things. So it is a real challenge, and I see it here at the school level. And when I talk about us starting hockey programs, it was always at cost recovery. I was always fortunate enough to be in a role where either I could run the program until I could find a teacher that could,
Right.
and then I just absorbed the cost of that instructor as part of my staff, and then it was just cost recovery on what the ice and transportation was. So we had a private company want to come out to Chestermere when I was at the high school and wanted to take over the program. And I said, okay. At that time, I had Bobby Joe Slusar, who had played 10 years on the women's national program, running my program. And I said, okay, what are you going to offer? And they said, well, they went into the individual skills stuff and that. And I said, okay, so who is the instructor you're going to send out? Well, it was this kid that had played junior and a little bit of minor pro and that. And then I said, okay, and what's the cost going to be? Well, the starting cost for the youngest age kids was going to be about $3,500. I said, okay. I said, well, here's the program we have in our school. I said, I've got Bobby Joe Duro, who played at Wisconsin and won a couple national championships there, played in the national team program for 10 years. I said, she's got her strength and training or development training, the same as the strength and conditioning coaches for all pro teams. And I said, the kids are getting 50 ice times for $350.
Wow.
And it was like,
That's interesting.
well, it's just one of those pieces. And I said, I'm not saying that our program is going to be that much better than yours, but I'm going to say that it's not going to be 10 times worse either. So for the cost and that piece. But you talk about the dropout piece. We had a psychologist by the name of Dr. Alex Russell from Toronto come out and speak to staff, and he was talking about anxiety and that. And we started talking about dropping out of things as students got older. And he goes, well, the biggest difference is gender. He said, your females, when they get into high school, he said they'll do what he called running on a treadmill. They'll get so focused on one thing that everything else drops to the wayside and they just go. So he said if their goal is to get into a certain particular university program, said they'll drop everything off, even if they're a decent varsity athlete. If they're not a top varsity athlete, if they're a decent one, he said they'll just stop playing that sport because they want to focus on their academics. Mm-hmm. He goes, us guys on the other side, he said, we're not that smart. He said we'll continue to play the sport even though it's taking away from the other things that we probably should be focusing it on. And he goes, we'll play on the lowest tier of hockey just because we're there with our buddies and having some fun. And he said that was the big difference with it. He said females will allow themselves to get focused and they will drop off on everything that's taking time away from it. And so those are a few observations that I've got along in my gray hair.
Thank you very much.